and then the lights would go out and another segment would open up. And this went on and on and on, Julie. I never gave up, but I was really starting to get somewhat frightened that I wasn't going to get out. And when it came to the end, I didn't know it was going to be that. And I was a brat just one more time to one of the demons. And all of a sudden, boom, I am thrust into this joy and bliss and love, and everything else just fades away.
Welcome to the Light the Day podcast, where we explore spiritually transformative experiences. Today, I am thrilled to introduce to the show Kathy McDaniel. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for saying yes to being here. I'm so excited for people to hear your story, your near-death experience, and your lived experiences that are just tremendous. Uh, First of all, I'd love for you to share just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll talk about your story.
Well, after 78 years of living, there's a lot to share. But basically, my dad was in the Navy, so me and my siblings and mom traveled all over the United States during my childhood years, and that affected me a lot. I was always the new kid in school kind of thing. I was always in Catholic schools, all the way up to my 1 year in college. So that had a lot to do with the formation of who I am. And I've just had a lot of experiences, I think, that um, were outside of the religious area, and that took me a long time after coming back after the NDE to integrate and sort through. So it's been a real process this last 25
Yeah,
years.
I imagine. So your near-death experience was 25 years ago? Was that? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's you've had some time to
And the thing about those experiences is you experience those in your spirit and your soul. So they never fade. They're always just as clear as when you experience them. That's one thing that's really weird about that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, there's just certain moments in our life that just remain crystal clear. And certainly when you're experiencing something from a spirit level without the body's interference, that would definitely be something that would stay with you, I would think, for
Yeah,
sure.
the doctors, I know when before I went out under, I had ARDS, which was lung failure, and didn't know what else to do to me. So they were going to give me this drug, white amnesia. And the last thing the doctor said is you'll never be able to remember anything that happens while you're in the coma. And, 25 years later, it's still
It's still there. I can remember it all.
there.
Yeah, so what was life like? Just, give us just a little bit of a picture of what was like before this happened, and then we'll go into what happened.
Well, yeah, the Catholic Church, I was very deep into that. I mean, as a, junior high person, I wanted to be a nun. I mean, it was all the pomp and circumstance and the ceremony. It was all something that I truly believed in, and so once you get back from the experience on the other side, religion takes a whole different flavor. So to come back and be with your same family, your same friends, your same go to church on Sunday, Ash Wednesday, the whole thing, and to have that start to kind of crumble and erode, you're afraid to alienate your family, especially, and your friends. And first of all, people don't really like the idea that I went to hell or had the hellish experience. The the feedback was, gee, Kathy, we thought you were such a nice, good girl, why did you end up in hell? And there was no good answer,
Yeah.
And so it took a very long time to process that whole thing, many years. It was 10 years, I believe, before I got to an IANS meeting up in Seattle, which was about an hour away. And to walk into this huge room full of people that were listening to Eben Alexander talk, I thought, well, number one, these are my people. And number two, they've all had these wonderful, glowing, spiritual angel, you know, uh, experiences. And that wasn't mine. I mean, at the very end of my experience, I did, quote, go to heaven, and that was awesome. But the rest of it, I had to struggle with.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so interesting. And IANS is such a special organization. I know that when I've been interested in this for years, and I had my own spiritual transformation after my kids died, and then when I finally connected with IANS, which is the International Association of Near-Death Studies, I remember going to the first online meeting that I went to, that's been over a year ago. And I sat in that sharing space. It was a sharing meeting, so people could come on and just share their experiences without judgment or um, criticism, or just a very open space. And it just felt so amazing to be in a space where I could just freely share my experiences, and that was amazing. So I can only imagine what that must have felt like with for you, even though you had to reconcile the difference in your experience. And I will say, for those of you listening, be sure and get Kathy's book, and remind us of the title of your book.
It's called Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat.
Ah, I love that. Okay. Misfit in Hell to Heaven Expat. Okay. So you go into a lot of detail. One of the things I really appreciated about your book was you not only took us from your life experience, but you took us back into the history of your family, which I thought was so amazing because then that gave context to what you were experiencing. It
Mhm.
wasn't just like we're just not planted here independent of our family and our external circumstances. So that was a beautiful thing. And so I really encourage everyone to go and read the book, because then you get a full scope. But we're going to touch on it today. We're going to touch on it a little bit today. The other thing I really appreciated about your book and your experiences is that you lived a very, and I can really appreciate this, you lived a very varied life before this near-death experience, and a life of tremendous challenge, economic challenge, relationship challenges. And I can really appreciate that because I've had some of my own economic and relationship challenges that end in divorce and end in bankruptcy and things like that, which, our experiences are different. But I appreciated the fact that, because sometimes you know, we like to make our life look like it's all hunky dory. It's all pretty packaged, so pretty. So take us to the day that you died. Like, what was happening, and then we'll go from there.
I had gone to Seattle from Santa Cruz, California, to help my former fiance and current best friend who had found out he had leukemia and he needed a couple of caregivers to go through this research hospital, and they were going to try and save him. He was only, 53 years old, and he used to be in good shape. So I went up there it was supposed to be for a couple of months, maybe 3 or 4 months, but as it progressed, it was almost 9 months up there, constant trauma. He'd be better, he'd be worse. We'd run him to the hospital in the middle of the night. And finally he died. And I just couldn't wrap my mind around him actually leaving, and I was exhausted mentally and physically and emotionally. And so I went to a concert with a friend I met up in Seattle and caught the flu that was going around, very similar to COVID. And in no time at all, I was extremely ill. I was lucky my friend picked up the phone, and when I called him and I said, I'm coughing up blood. I don't know what to do. Got me to the hospital, threw me in the emergency room, then told me that they just didn't really know what to do with me. So they were going to put me in a coma and try everything they could. My daughter found a website where about ARDS, which is what I had, acute respiratory distress syndrome. So she was telling the pulmonologist, try this, try that. So the last thing I heard from the doctor was, we're going to put you in a coma and you won't be able to remember anything that happens, so you're either wake up or you won't, so the family said goodbye and out I went. But what happened was I woke up and I found myself in what I know now to be the void. And that's just black and it's not scary. You just don't know where you are, and there's nothing going on. But that did morph into some sort of hellish experience that was real to me, having to do with demons and different segments and of trials, and if you'll do this we'll get you out, and the things they would ask me to do were of course anathema to me. I would keep saying no. I'm not going to do that. I don't care what you do to me. I'm not going to do that. Thus the misfit in hell thing. So they kept saying, okay, it's just going to get worse. And then the lights would go out and another segment would open up. And this went on and on and on, Julie. I never gave up, but I was really starting to get somewhat frightened that I wasn't going to get out. And when it came to the end, I didn't know it was going to be that. And I was a brat just one more time to one of the demons. And all of a sudden, boom, I am thrust into this joy and bliss and love, and everything else just fades away. I mean, your time on earth, anybody that was here, it's gone. And it's just this wonderful love. And when I finally got some bearings and I looked up, and I saw my friend who had just died the month before that had been taken care of, and he looked great. And because he died of leukemia, his hair fell out, he was all purple and swollen. And I thought, my God, he doesn't know he's dead. That was the thing. You don't feel like you're dead. And he was laughing. He thought that was so funny. And I thought, you know, wait a minute. I didn't say anything out loud. How did he hear me? And so I said, oh my God, you're dead. I'm dead. We're in heaven. This is great. Show me around. And then he got a little closer and said, now, Mary Kay, you've got too much left to do. And I thought, crap, they're throwing me out. And I just said,
Mhm.
no, no. Boom, back you go. And another short, pleasant thing happened. But then I found myself waking up, unable to move or talk, or and my family was there and they were all screaming with joy. And I, what the heck? So it took me a long time to get out of the hospital. There was a lot of rehab. I was 86 pounds, lost all my muscle mass um, on the trach. It was a terrible time. I did not want to be there. I wanted to be back in heaven. And I thought, too much left to do. I can't even breathe. So
Mhm.
it took a good year of hard work to even get any semblance of my life back. And this whole hellish experience was just haunting me. I hated to even go to sleep. And then to think, oh my gosh, you mean I'm going to have to go through this again when I die? I mean, my own mind, I thought, the Catholics believe in purgatory, and even though Jesus died for your sins, you're still going to have to pay. So I thought, I am. I got everything all paid up. In my own mind, I thought that. And now I'm going to have to live for God knows how many more years. And then I'm going to have to go back and do that again. Julie, it was a wreck. I mean, I was a
Oh,
wreck.
I
And,
can only imagine.
my therapist just said, well, I'm going to have to put PTSD on your chart, but I don't know how to help you. So 10 years, I'm bumping into things and trying to make some sense of what happened. And eventually, I found my way through a series of synchronicities, which are little breadcrumbs the angels drop to get you where they want you to go. So I ended up in Seattle at an IONS meeting and listen, I went a couple of times and all the stories were the angels and rainbow things. And I thought, what the heck? So finally, I was sneaking out of a meeting, and one guy came up and said, all right, why are you sneaking out? And I said, well, this didn't happen to me. And he says, why? And I says, I was in hell. He says, great. And I said, what? And he says, well, we never get to hear these. We hear there's, up to 10, maybe 15% of people have a hellish experience, but nobody wants to talk about it. And I said, duh. I mean, who wants to come up here and admit they went to hell? And he says, no, you got to tell the story. So I found Howard Storm. I found Nancy Evan Bush. I found, about 3 or 4 or 5 people that were not ostracized that were trying to understand what happened. And it was a good time for me to be there because they were open to let's kick this around instead of sweeping it under the rug. So I've had a sharing group for Ian's distressing people for several years now, and it's really grown. When we go to the conferences, the last 2 years we've had panels, and now next year they're giving us bigger and bigger rooms because more people are coming forward that didn't have the guts to before. And what we're discovering in a very slow manner is something that I finally came to the conclusion of is that I made that experience happen because I believed it would. As a
Mm,
Catholic, knew, I'll back that up because I've met a lot of people now that have had this distressing experiences, and a cool 85% of them are recovering Catholics.
mm,
So I think there's a real tie to not people. There's not a deserving this situation. It's manifesting it. I really believe, and I think what I've been set back for, and these people have too, is to explain that to people. God is all loving, all forgiving, and would never condemn anybody. But we can, if we choose, cause ourselves some grief on the other side. The other thing I believe is that had I stayed, I don't think I would have had that experience. I think that is something, again, that we manifest and then we come back so we can clear that, so we can share that with people and save them, skip the trip is what I say. And
yeah.
don't believe in it because that gives it power to happen. And God doesn't do
Well, and what keeps coming to my mind as you're sharing this is that it's not only when we leave here that people manifest that in their life here because they're in so much, I'll even use the word trauma.
that. Yeah,
They're in so much trauma over, what they learned as a child about hell that they live restrictive lives or they live lives worried about whether or not they're going to make it to heaven. And that's not a great way to live either. So I feel like, yeah, there's just you coming back and sharing this is not only for our life after, but for our life here.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the thing about I've heard so often that we can't love what we fear. And most religions teach us to fear God. So we
Mhm.
can't really love God. We can't trust God. We can't do what we're supposed to do on this life out of love because we're scared all the time. Yeah. I was told when I got back, I was having a hard time, literally. And I said, praying, hey, I need something positive to live by because I know what I've been taught, thou shalt not do this, that, and the other thing isn't working for me. So I was told very carefully to be loving, kind, merciful, forgiving, encouraging, grateful, non-judgmental, and useful. Kathy, if you forget the rest of it, just be loving and kind. So that has been what I have really tried to do with my life. And it's so interesting, Julie, because the more you concentrate on that, the more you see it come back. The more you see people change when they get that vibe. I've joined a senior center group down in where I live now, and it the person who manages us. When I first showed up, she said that I was told to go there. You know, the spirit keeps knocking you around and telling you to go do things. I was told to go to the senior center. What the heck's going to happen there? So I walked in and she says, "Can I help you?" And I says, "Yeah." She says, she looked at me. She says, "What are you here for?" And I said, "To be useful. That's on
Mm,
my list." And she looked at me and she says, "I see those two people over there. I need you to go talk to them. They're driving me nuts." So it was a negative conversations in a lot of the places. And so I would just show up and say, I don't like the sound of that. Let's talk about something positive, or use a lot of sense of humor to kind of turn things around. So I've been there, I think about a year and a half, and she came to me the other day and says, "You have no idea about how the vibe in this place has changed since you've shown up.
wow.
Everybody is so much happier, they're kinder to each other." She said, "I'm so glad you came." So that's the feedback you get from just being loving and kind. It's amazing. It
I
is.
love that so much. And I love the fact that just the gentle way that you turn the conversation around too. Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't I don't like the direction this conversation is going. Let's talk about with just so much love and gentleness.
Yeah, yes, it's a great way to live. It
Mm,
really is. And the fear goes away. You can't wait to get home. That's what God, where it is. And I've learned so much about other people. There's hundreds and hundreds of people in Ions, and to listen to their stories is just fascinating. And it is just like, okay, people from all cultures, all over the world, all had the same experience. It's not like we're making this stuff up, and trying to fool people with it. It's just what is
yeah. Yeah.
truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm wondering, you mentioned that you spent 10 years trying to integrate this. What was, and I know going to the IANS, just from reading your book and from what you shared here, was a big part of that. But what were some of the turning points for you where you were able to, because what it feels like now is like you've really integrated the heaven part of that. You've let go of the hell part of it, and that was part of the experience, but you've come to some level of understanding of what happened there and how to avoid that moving forward. um, and you've integrated that heaven piece. What did that look like as you were making that shift? What was that transition like? What?
It was so helpful to be with the Ions people and hear how they did it. And this certain kind of basic understanding that they come to, that I finally was able to grasp, that we plan our lives. Uh, we plan them probably innumerable incarnations, which the church said, X, no, that's not true. But I really believe in that now. I think we come down probably with a bunch of our soulmates and say, okay, we're going back to earth. That's the toughest gig. Everybody says it. You got to be a really brave soul to come here. This is tough. Um, but with our friends, and we meet them at different times, like you and I probably knew each other and just thought, well, we're going to be kind of busy, but we'll touch base for an hour or so when we get down there just to check in. But so if I think that God didn't do this to me, um, and I chose to do it, for whatever reason, I accept it and I say, okay, I chose this. This is a horrible thing I'm going through here, but I know it's going to work out for the best. I have to trust that It's all good. That's what they all say. And at first I just thought one, bah, maybe sick to hear. Not if you say that one more time, I'll punch you. But it is. It's all good. It all works out the way it's supposed to. We're here to learn things. We came down and geez, I know I was here to learn patience. You get enough times where you think, why in the heck, the people in my life are driving me crazy. No, you chose that because you want to learn patience this time. And
Mhm.
so you can let go of all that stress because you know you chose it yourself. And these are all really just your friends in disguise. And when you get back to heaven, we're all meeting at the bar in my part of heaven, and free hors d'oeuvres for everybody, good wine. And we're going to sit around and we're going to laugh about, oh, remember the time you did such and such, and you say, oh, I know, I was so mad at you. So it's a whole different ballpark.
Yeah.
Now to know that this isn't real, this is just a play. I wrote the play. I agreed to play it. And then I'm going to go home and it'll all be, great. We'll do it again. A lot of people say I'm not going back to Earth. That's out. That's too hard. So there's a zillion places to go. And you kind of make a game of it because it really is kind of a game.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a conversation with somebody recently, and she had lost someone really close to her. And this was really interesting to me because it wasn't a perspective that I had, but she felt like listening to near-death experiences that she lost this person for good when they died because once people get to heaven, they just forget about everybody here. And I said, well, where did you get that perspective? And she's like, listening to near-death experiences. They don't want to come back. They're there. They don't care about what's going on here. And I'm like, well, that's not exactly my perspective. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that idea.
Yeah, I think they're there. I mean, I can feel spirits around me. My dad, he died about 3 years ago, but he's always around me. The spirits they like flicker lights for you. He helps me find things. They inspire you. Sometimes you don't know what quite to do. You can sit down and think of somebody, and they're there. They're very involved with our lives. Um, I'm sorry that people would feel that way. Um, you and I have both lost children. Um, you know, I think we won't know till we get back, and there's a reason for that,
Exactly.
but I always wonder, is that going to be my child, is she going to be a little, blob of light, or is she going to look like herself? We don't know, but the people that see people say that they recognize them. I know my friend looked like he was about 35 instead of 50. I understand people look younger, but they definitely recognize each other. And, I don't worry about that anymore. I know everybody I love is going to be there and it's just going to be a party. That's why I tell my mom now, she's 97. And she's a little bit still afraid of going. And I said, oh, mom, all your friends who have died, almost everybody, and dad's there. And, it's just going to be so much fun. You're just going to say, oh, why did I hang on all these years? I could have been up there having a good time. So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I totally agree with you. That's been my experience too, is that the people that I love that have moved on to the other side, like I feel their presence here. I feel their encouragement. I feel their, just even the things that you listed, you said, go back and be loving and kind and patient and useful. I don't remember all the terms you used, but it's a beautiful list. Um, I feel like that's what they're doing from the other side. Like we're here kind of swimming against the tide of the earth tide or the fear tide that's here on earth, I should say, and trying to bring a bit of heaven here. And that has definitely been my
Oh,
experience and my observation as well.
yeah.
Um, I would So you mentioned a little bit, well, you mentioned angels a little while ago, and it's one of my favorite topics. So I would love for you to share any perspective that you have on angels, how they interact with us, anything that you might know about that topic from your experience.
That's interesting. I just got in touch with a lady who listens to angels, and she'll talk to you for a few minutes, and then she's going to go talk to your angels for 2 weeks, and then she comes back and gives you the messages. And you kind of take that one with a grain of salt and think, oh yeah, okay, sure. But she came back with some very interesting observations. I'm not at liberty to say exactly what it was, but it was you need to turn this direction. I know you're having a good time going that direction, but you really kind of need to go this direction now. Okay. And I knew that was coming in my life, but I didn't think it would be quite this soon. So I took a chance and I thought, okay, I'm going to leave this group of people and I'm going to go this direction. And boom, within days, my life changed. I
Mm.
mean, I can't tell you. It's just, why didn't I listen sooner, kind of thing. But that's why we're here. We got the free will thing. I mean, we may plan our lives and what we want to learn, and then we get down here, and of course we forgot all that. But sometimes you need a little help from the other side to remind you to remember that um, there's a plan. Okay, Kath, back on the plan. So yeah, I think angels are great. As even a little child, I always felt like I had a guardian angel. And one time it was cool. I was on this show podcast where they also did ghost busting kind of things. They'd go in the houses and they always describe angels or spirits as orbs of light,
Mhm.
just and that was kind of what humans see them as. Their energy, just like everything else, these orbs of light. So I didn't know it, but they were filming me with two different cameras, one like you and I are using, and another one that's used for energy picking up. And they kind of glossed that over at the beginning of the program. But about halfway through, when I was telling the part of my story where I saw my friend up in heaven, and what they all of a sudden one of these guys yells, "We've got orbs." And he says, "There's three orbs around her head. And are you on camera too, or whatever?" And I'm looking all around. I'm looking up above my head. I don't see anything on the picture. They say, "Oh yeah, we got three." When she mentioned that man's name, the three orbs were around you. And I says, "Oh my God, I mentioned that's Pat. Oh my God, it's Pat." And so I asked them if they'd send me a copy of that, and they never would. So I
Oh,
know, but I saw it, for a few minutes. I saw the three orbs around my head. It was so cool. So I'm a total believer now. I mean,
yeah, yeah. Orbs is something that, I hear about. I haven't seen very often, but one day I did get on a call like this with somebody who has had a near-death experience, has this, opening with the other side. And as we were talking, at first I was like, what is going on with the light in their room? Because I kept seeing it was like lights like a disco ball
uh-huh.
in the room, but there wasn't the pattern that you would see with a disco ball. And I'm like watching, I mean, it was like 20, just moving all in unusual
Oh, me.
patterns.
Oh,
And I just thought, what is this? And finally I said, what's going on with the light in your room? And this person said, there's been a lot of a spirit in my room today. And I went, oh, I'm actually
goodness.
seeing these orbs. I'm like, it was
Oh, how cool.
incredible. I wish I could remember because I did record it. And I did go back and I was able to see it again on the recording
Oh,
to a certain
oh,
extent. So
yeah.
yeah, that was incredible. But I do feel like that we're not alone here. How? Did you have that experience, going to the other side and coming back? Do you feel like you had more of an understanding that we're not walking this life alone when you came back?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're you're not alone. I mean, there's probably, I don't know how many people, spirits around you all the time. And that's where meditation's kind of cool. I try and get into that when I can, just to be quiet, and just you just feel that, almost not a throbbing, but you feel an energy uh that you're a part of, that collective spirit or whatever. Um, and this is just your car, and you're driving around and you're sitting in the car, but you're not the car. And then, when we die, we just leave the car here and go back home. Um,
Mm,
yeah, it becomes so evident, so real that I don't even think about it anymore. It's just I'm just biding my time trying to get stuff done, that I'm supposed to get done, and then I'll go home and it's just nothing to worry about.
yeah.
It's all good.
So what are some of the things that, like we're talking about, not feeling quite as alone, but were there other ways that your life changed after this experience? I know that it took some time to kind of integrate this hellish experience that you had. That was, something that you had to, well, and not only that, the physical aspects of your experience as well, taking a year to reestablish your physical health. Uh, in what ways do you feel like this changed your life and your life experience?
Um, Relationships with my family, I think that was tough. Um, Best friends that I went to Catholic school with, uh, if I was starting to have arguments with my priest when he would give a sermon. And he was, oh, one time they had the little second graders, they were going to get first communion, and how he went to talk to the little row of them and during mass and said something to the effect of, now you have to be uh, good to your brothers and sisters, you have to listen to your mom and dad, you don't want to make God cry now. I mean, if you are acting up, you're going to make God cry. And I thought, what kind of bullshit is that to tell a child? So after church, man, I went zooming right up to him and I says, that is not true. That is not a good thing. You tell a child they have the power to make God cry. I said, uh, no, so he kind of backed off. And then the next Sunday he said something that made me mad. And after a while he went to see me come and take off. And I thought, okay, this isn't working out. So I would stop going to Sunday mass and I just would go to morning mass. And it was just a bunch of, I don't know, 15 old people, but it was a quieter deacon that gave a gentle sermon. So I was kind of weaning myself out, and then COVID hit and nobody could go to church. And if you've been in a church lately, a lot of people opted out.
Hmm.
I know in the Catholic churches where you used to have, mass on Saturday night and then six masses the next day, you got maybe three masses and the church is half full. So I
Mm,
think people are getting away from religion.
hmm.
There's not a whole lot of people coming up that will replace the priests that are dying off. So I think this is significant, not just for the Catholic Church, but for religions in general. I think people are evolving past that. God is an angry, vengeful, jealous creature that's gonna send you to hell no matter how hard you try. People are tired of that, and it's not true. I think, well, there's millions of us that have these experiences. So you keep hearing there's going to be a tipping point at some point when we do all awaken to the fact that God is love, God is energy, dark matter, whatever you want to call it. The consciousness is just all God.
Mm.
And we're just pieces of God experimenting and experiencing God's self. Um, it all sounds low matrix and trippy, but Even science is starting to say, wait a minute, there's something big out there.
Yeah. What would you say to people? Because I know some people are concerned about people who are distancing themselves from religion, and they feel like, if we don't have these religious rules that, everything will go to hell in a handbasket. What are your thoughts about that? What are
Well,
what would you say to somebody?
if you just replace that with the loving and kind thing, you'll get a lot more bang for your buck than thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife or their horse or their dog or whatever. It's got to turn around to be positive. People are tired of the negative. It's not working. Look at the world. I mean, if people would be loving and kind and forgiving and all that stuff, that's all you got to do. And you don't need somebody to really tell you that. You know that. You
Yeah,
know that. Even as a child, that's not right to take somebody else's toys. We have an innate um, ability to be good.
yeah, 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 yeah. I do think there's a lot of people who feel like it's kind of that old energy of we've got to beat ourselves into submission,
Mm,
and it's that kind of energy of like, well, if we don't have this energy kind of like nipping at our heels to correct us all the time, that, if we're just talking love, then that's not going to be enough to get us where we need to go. But what I think I'm hearing you say is, if we move into that energy of love, then we're going to, like, um, I don't know if I can express this the way that I want to, but we're going to be able to, like, bring more love into other circumstances, rather than maybe the anger, the fear, that kind of thing.
yeah. It reminds me of the hippies back in the 60s, all you need is love. Um, but then the drugs kind of got involved and I kind of went sideways. Yeah, I mean, it's not supposed to be perfect here. Earth
Right.
is school. So we come to learn, we come to have experiences, and um, that's just the way it is. You know,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it was perfect, we'd be home, but it's not. And
Yeah.
to accept that and say, okay, I'll just do the best I can. That's all I'm responsible for, is just to be loving and kind. And what everybody else does, well, you get your life review. And I wasn't there long enough to get one, but I have yet to hear anybody say it was judgmental or bad. Most people are quite enthralled with a whole movie about themselves, about every single thing that happened in their lives, just to be able to see it and remember it and see how you did, and then they turn it around and you get to experience what that's like to have interacted with you on every level, every person you ran into. So that's where the learning comes in. Well, I could have been a little nicer when and when that guy bumped my fender. um, uh, you just learn, and there's no judgment. That's what's so nice. You can live your life so much happier knowing you're not going to be judged. Not one
Mm,
person has come back that says I was judged. Nobody. It's just I learned, and
mm,
you know, it was all good. Nobody. I the whole hellish thing with us that come back, I think, is again to help people understand that's not God's doing. It's just
mm,
not. I'm sure there's positive, negative, evil, good. There's some sort of egregore, as some people call it, a place on the other side where people choose with their free will. I don't want to be a goody two shoes. I don't want to be around you people. I want to be someplace dark and horrible. Well, have at it. You got a free will, and there's probably some place, but that's not God's doing. It's just absence of God.
mm,
So there's might be some, but I've been told too that there's always angels hanging around saying, you change your mind, I'll give you a lift home. I'm an Uber, just I'm free. And people always have a chance. to change their mind, but it's
Mhm.
not God sending them there.
Yeah. Yeah, I've lived a lot of decades on this earth. And I know that you have too. And and I've seen so many shifts and changes in our world, and we seem to be, especially, 2020, we know that things shifted and changed a lot during that time. I would love to hear what your thoughts are, because I hear a lot of people talking about how the world is changing, and this creates a lot of fear in some people. It creates a lot of excitement in others. Um, uh, what do you think about, like, the changes that are happening, and the, you know, I feel like that it is an overall positive thing that things are moving in the direction that they're moving, even though it feels very chaotic.
Well, I just think it's chaotic. That's just the nature of the planet and the people on it. I don't know if other planets are having the same thing happen, but again, I've heard so many times that Earth is the toughest one. Um, and I think we should all feel honored to be considered brave souls, to be down here to kind of really learn the big lessons because
Mm,
they're in our face all the time. You can't turn around and go to the grocery store without running into a situation where you have a choice to be angry and impatient and crabby. But no matter where I go, I try and talk to people. I mean, you walk by somebody and you're in line and say, "Wow, I've quite people didn't show up for work today or something," and then just people are shocked, that you saw them, that you took the time to talk to them, and it's whoever. I don't care who they are or what they look like, and it just sparks that humanity and people. You'd be surprised what you can do in one day, just
mm,
being kind. That's
mm,
all.
yeah.
It's revolutionary.
Yeah, and I realized what I said was, I, what I, because there's a lot of hard things that are happening in the world. So I didn't mean to discount the hard things that are happening. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of very challenging energy and very chaotic situations happening. But what I did mean was, I feel like people are becoming more open to the spiritual in some
Mhm.
ways, and that's what I feel is really lovely. So I just want to
Well, I think because so
clarify.
many so many NDEers are coming back,
Hmm.
and all you got to do is get in a sharing group, and then you feel the energy, and then you go out, and it's contagious in a wonderful way.
Yeah,
Yeah, what your program is doing. Look at all the podcasts out there right now that are about NDEs. I mean, it's incredible. Thousands and thousands of them.
yeah,
Um, and millions of people listening. I mean, I've been on two where they were over 1 million views each. And I think, holy cow, I'm just this old lady sitting in this little town, and then 2 million people saw my story. I mean, that's how powerful this movement, or whatever you want to call it, is. And it's not blatant. It's, I won't say insidious, but it's seeping. It's seeping because people are hungry for it. They're tired of the fighting. They're tired of the greed, and they're just tired of it. And
yeah,
so this is a good time for your show, for us to encourage people. Yeah.
yeah. I think so too. What are some of the ways, this is something I like to ask everybody, is what are some of the ways that on a daily or weekly basis that you like to, like, maybe spiritual practices that you engage in that help you stay connected?
Yeah, I think I've been trying to do the meditation thing. I've got a little app on my, phone, and this last 2 months has been total chaos, so I haven't been able to do that. But I think that's really helpful to sit down and just remember who you are. You're
Mm,
not a human being, you're a spirit in a human body. you're a spirit having a human experience, and it's a really short bit of time. You look at eternity and you look at 100 years here, it's a blink of the eye. Enjoy the ride, you know. Stop and smell the flowers, be kind to people, enjoy it as much as you can. You're going to get knocked down and run over a couple of times, but you planned it for a good reason, and good will come out of it. We just have to be patient and have faith in that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your wisdom today. Where can people find you?
I have a website, and that's www.misfitandhell-to-have-an-expat.com. And I've got Facebook. I'm on that. If they try, they'll find me. just just Google me if nothing else. But if you get on the website, if you leave a message, I always get back to people.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for being here
Thank
today,
you too,
Kathy. I
Lee. It's
really
been
appreciate,
fun.
yeah, I appreciate you sharing your story with us.